After resigning last week, Defense Secretary James Mattis was supposed to stay on the job through February. But on Sunday, President Trump announced that he's removing Mattis early and will replace him with Deputy Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan beginning January 1st. That's coming right up. Mattis's impending departure has Washington fixtures like Bob Woodward in a panic.
It's a governing crisis. You have the exit of Mattis, which is a tragedy for the country, a tragedy for President Trump. Mattis was able to thread the needle and try to make his points and, quite frankly, educate President Trump on some of these issues. And so the departure of him is something that is, I think, going down in the history books.
Well, Christian Whiton is a former State Department senior advisor to Trump and George W. Bush administrations. He joins us now. Christian, I really don't recall Woodward saying that when Barack Obama fired Mattis that was a tragedy. Did I miss that part? I didn't miss that, did I?
The pearl clutching really has gotten out of control. I mean, Mattis did what he was supposed to do, which is kill ISIS. That was the urgent crisis. That's what needed to be done. That's what Donald Trump promised to do. And he did it. He did a masterful job. He helped unlock the power of our forces in Syria, get the lawyers out of the way and let our soldiers do their job. But Mattis was opposed to Trump on most other things. He wanted to stay in the Paris climate boondoggle. He opposed moving the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. He opposed getting out of the Iran deal. He didn't want to send troops to the border. So what President Trump deserves and what he ought to get is someone who actually is on board with the Trump agenda. And that's what Bob Woodward doesn't like.
Yeah, you've got a great piece at foxnews.com. It's gone kind of viral about why him leaving is a good thing. There are many things you lay out in your piece. At the same time, I was struck with the pettiness of his resignation letter, if you will, that he would still be the Secretary of Defense, that he's still talking about the Commander-in-Chief, and yet he messages that he doesn't like what the Commander-in-Chief is doing. You know, I'm not surprised that the president asked him to leave early, because why would you do that? It would have a morale effect on the troops, on the other people in the Pentagon. How could he justify that, considering his position and that he's talking, say whatever you want once you're out of office. But that seemed to be, at least to me, surprising. Did it surprise you, or was this something that he's known for being a little problematic like that?
No, it did strike me as odd. It struck me as odd he led with sort of complaints that we were not being kind enough to our NATO allies. That's another thing Mattis was against, what the president has done, which is to insist that NATO fulfill the pledges it has made to spend a measly 2%. They're not even close. Germany is at 1.3%, and our friends up in Canada at 1% of GDP. That's all they spend, so we get the privilege of defending them. They screw us on trade. They are, in Germany, generating fake news, anti-American propaganda against us, and we have to defend them. What Donald Trump did was say, hey, you got to spend your fair share. Mattis was opposed to that, and his resignation letter said, oh, he sort of brought this back up again. Well,
look, at the same time, it's a signal of respect that you want your allies and your friends to be able to support themselves if something happened. There could be nothing worse in the world that if our friends and allies are unprepared for something to happen, when we might not be able to manage the entire world, if there was a black swan of some major nuclear event, it's something that you would want your friends and your family to say, which is, you've got to help us. You've got to be able to stand on your own 2 feet to some degree in order for this to be able to work out. And that seems to be, of course, the president's approach. At the same time now, who do you think should replace him? Because that's got to be obviously a question everybody's asking. Who's next?
I think it should be someone political. Not that the Secretary of Defense should get into partisan political spats, but someone who can implement what Trump wants to do. He's drawn down in Syria. There's talk of drawing down in Afghanistan, which makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know what we're going to accomplish in another year or two that we haven't accomplished in 17 years. And if you add Afghanistan to Iraq and Syria, that's $60 billion a year. That's real money you could either save or you could spend rebuilding our Air Force and Navy and missiles and Space Force to deter China. And that's the the type of Secretary of Defense he
well,
needs.
It's a political position. It really is. I mean, no, understanding the military, understanding what's going on the ground is key. So having a general is fabulous, but ultimately it really is about being a negotiator, being a politician, understanding what needs to be accomplished. And I think obviously the president is finding that out. Christian, great piece at FoxNews.com. And thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Tammy. Appreciate it.